On the day of the Canadian elections, Donald Trump made a shocking statement, urging Canadians to become the 51st state of the U.S. or face economic ruin. But is it a bold proposal or a desperate ploy? In his message, Trump called on Canadians to elect someone who would facilitate Canada's entry into the U.S. as a new state. He promised significant economic benefits, a fourfold increase in industry, the abolition of tariffs, and free military support, but only if Canada relinquished its sovereignty. The author presents the current border between the two countries as a mere formality, hinting that historically and logically, Canada should become part of the United States. He argues that America can no longer afford to financially support Canada, transparently implying economic pressure if the merger is rejected. Furthermore, addressing Canadian voters, he urges them to elect a leader capable of significantly reducing taxes and strengthening the country's defense capabilities. As an incentive, a multiple increase in production volumes in key sectors, automotive, metallurgical, energy, and others, is offered, with a guarantee of no duties and taxes if Canada joins the U.S. as the 51st state. Such a move, according to the author, would eliminate artificial barriers and pave the way for free movement and prosperity, negating all disadvantages and multiplying the advantages. This is how it should have happened. The United States can no longer provide financial support to Canada in the astronomical volumes that have occurred in the past. Such a practice is meaningless, especially considering that Canada is not part of the American state system. It is worth noting that this is not the first time President Trump has resorted to such rhetoric regarding his northern neighbor. Since his re-election in December 2024, Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed the idea of Canada joining the United States as the 51st state. This idea, actively promoted in his speeches and social media, has caused widespread resonance and lively discussions both in America and abroad. In December 2024, during a summit with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Trump jokingly suggested that in the event of escalating trade disagreements, Canada might consider joining the U.S. as a state. He even addressed Trudeau, calling him Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada, while emphasizing the importance of continuing negotiations on trade and tariffs. On December 18th of the same year, Trump turned to the Truth Social platform to publicly declare his support for the idea of Canadian statehood. He expressed confidence that a significant number of Canadians support this move, citing potential benefits such as lower taxes and increased security. Behind the scenes of political discussions, the opinion was voiced that even hockey legend Wayne Gretzky could easily win an election, whether for prime minister or governor. On January 7th, speaking at a press conference in Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump reaffirmed his determination to use economic influence to integrate Canada into the United States. In his opinion, such a union would strengthen national security and significantly reduce border security costs. To confirm the seriousness of his intentions, Trump posted an image of the American flag on the Truth Social network, symbolically covering both countries, accompanied by a signature paraphrasing the words of the Canadian national anthem. In an interview with Fox News during the Super Bowl, Trump was directly asked about his plans to annex Canada. In response, he emphasized that his desire for Canada to become the 51st state was absolutely serious. Developing his initiative, on February 1st, Trump introduced 25% duties on imports of Canadian goods, explaining this as necessary to combat illegal border crossings and fentanyl smuggling. At the same time, he made it clear that the abolition of these tariffs was possible if Canada agreed to join the U.S. as a state. On one of the February days, namely the 13th, a statement that stirred the world community was made from the heart of American power, the Oval Office. The then head of the United States, Donald Trump, announced the introduction of retaliatory tariffs on goods imported from Canada. But that was just the beginning. In his speech, the president made it clear about his desire for closer integration of the northern neighbor, seeing in Canada nothing more than a potential 51st state of America. He again, in his usual manner, christened Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau governor, hinting that joining the United States promises Canadians countless benefits, in particular, a significant reduction in the tax burden. Later, in the realm of social media, the idea of absorbing Canada gained even more traction. Trump stated that Canada spends too little on its own defense, relying on the generosity and military might of the United States. According to him, American taxpayers subsidize Canada to the tune of over $200 billion a year. Questioning why this should continue, Trump proposed what he considered the only sensible solution: the complete integration of Canada into the United States. This, in his view, would automatically eliminate all tariffs and trade barriers, lead to radical tax cuts for Canadians, and provide them with an unprecedented level of security. The disappearance of the northern border would be another bonus for America. The already greatest and most powerful nation in the world would become even bigger, better, and stronger, while Canada, in turn, would become an integral part of this triumph. The day is coming when the artificial border, drawn on the map decades ago, will disappear, and a country worthy of admiration for its safety and beauty will emerge. The anthem, "O Canada," will still sound proudly, but as a symbol of a thriving state within the greatest power that has ever existed on the planet. Another statement by Donald Trump regarding Canada's energy sector did not go unnoticed. Having once rejected Canadian oil in favor of achieving U.S. energy independence, he is now advocating for the resumption of a large-scale pipeline project connecting Canadian oil fields with American refineries. This shift demonstrates Washington's recognition of its continued dependence on Canadian energy resources. Trump's change in rhetoric, previously asserting that the U.S. does not need Canadian oil, but now advocating for the revival of the Keystone XL project, has once again stirred discussion. At a recent press conference, he criticized the Biden administration for abandoning the project and highlighted the contrast in his energy policy. Donald Trump reiterated his commitment to the idea of energy independence for the United States, calling for the immediate return of the Keystone XL pipeline builders, whose project was halted by the Biden administration. Trump emphasized that the country has significant potential and expressed confidence in the need to resume construction of the pipeline. According to Trump, the company involved in the construction of Keystone XL should return to America and continue the work that was interrupted by the incompetent Biden administration. He noted that his administration is ready to cooperate and ensure a quick start to the work. Trump suggested that if the original contractor refused, another pipeline company could complete the project, emphasizing the importance of building Keystone XL for the country's energy security. To assess President Trump's position, Canada's energy potential should be considered. The country is a major player in the global energy market, possessing vast natural resources that are used to meet domestic needs and for export. Canada's energy sector in 2023 became a significant driver of the national economy, accounting for approximately 10.3% of the country's nominal GDP. This sector not only directly employed over 285,000 Canadians, but also indirectly supported the employment of another 411,000 people, demonstrating its importance to the labor market. The total volume of energy exports reached an impressive $199.1 billion. The United States remains a key trading partner, accounting for 89% of Canadian energy exports, indicating close economic and energy ties between the two countries. Canada holds a strong position as the fourth largest oil producer in the world, producing 4.9 million barrels per day in 2023. The main contribution to this indicator comes from the oil sands of the province of Alberta, which have become a symbol of Canadian energy power. Crude oil exports reached a record high of 4 million barrels per day, accounting for 81% of the country's total production. This brought Canada $124 billion in export revenue, strengthening its position in the global energy market. The completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, TMX, expansion project was an important step in the development of Canadian energy infrastructure. An additional 590,000 barrels per day of capacity provides Canadian producers with wider access to promising markets in the Pacific region. However, despite the commissioning of new capacities, experts predict that even the expanded TMX pipeline could be fully loaded in just 5 years if oil production growth rates continue. This indicates ongoing pressure on infrastructure and the need for further investment in its development to maintain the competitiveness of the Canadian energy industry. In Canada's energy symphony, natural gas plays its own important part. The year 2023 saw the country produce an average of 17.9 billion cubic feet of this valuable resource per day, a 3.6% increase over the previous year. The United States remains the primary consumer of Canadian natural gas, using it to heat homes, power industrial plants, and generate electricity. These stable exports underscore Canada's key role in maintaining the energy security of the entire North American continent. Electricity generation in Canada reached 615.3 million megawatt-hours in 2023, a 3.9% decrease compared to 2022. This was due to lower precipitation levels, which negatively impacted hydroelectric power generation. Nevertheless, hydroelectric power retained its leading position in the electricity generation mix, accounting for 58% of the total. Nuclear power followed with a 13.7% share, while wind and solar power combined contributed 7.2% to the country's overall energy balance. At the same time, electricity deliveries to the United States decreased by almost a quarter to 49.4 million megawatt-hours. This decline reflects growing concerns about the environmental situation, which inevitably affected the operation of power plants. Renewable energy in Canada is showing strong growth. By 2024, the total capacity of wind, solar, and energy storage installations exceeded 24 gigawatts. An impressive 18 gigawatts come from wind farms, while utility-scale solar installations provide more than 4 gigawatts. These investments demonstrate Canada's strategic course toward diversifying its energy sector and transitioning to greener energy sources. Despite this, traditional fossil fuels continue to play a key role in the country's economy. Crude oil exchange between the U.S. and Canada is characterized by significant volumes, with sustained demand for Canadian heavy oil, particularly Western Canadian Select, WCS. In 2023, a steady flow of Canadian oil fueled the American economy, reaching an impressive 4 million barrels per day. This volume accounted for about 60% of total crude oil imports into the United States, highlighting the strategic importance of its northern neighbor for the country's energy security. WCS, Western Canadian Select, plays a key role in these supplies, a benchmark grade of heavy oil produced in the rich oil sands of the Canadian province of Alberta. Due to its density and high sulfur content, WCS traditionally trades at a discount to lighter grades, such as West Texas Intermediate, WTI. In 2023, this price difference increased slightly, averaging $18.65 per barrel, slightly higher than $18.22 in 2022. This discount is influenced by various factors, including transportation costs, refining complexity, and seasonal demand fluctuations. U.S. refineries, especially those located in the Midwest region, PADD 2, have historically focused on processing heavy Canadian oil. The giant BP Whiting refinery in Indiana, one of the largest in the region, has invested significantly in optimizing WCS processing. This adaptation underscores the indispensability of Canadian heavy oil for ensuring the stable operation of American refineries. The Enbridge Transcontinental Pipeline Artery, including the Canadian Mainline and its American Lakehead extension, serves as a vital channel for delivering Canadian oil to fuel markets in the United States. This vast network ensures the uninterrupted transfer of crude oil from Alberta to refineries located both in the heart of the Midwest and far beyond. In addition to oil, natural gas imports further strengthen the energy ties connecting the two countries. An extensive system of gas pipelines directly connects Canadian fields with American consumers, guaranteeing stable and cost-effective fuel supplies. In 2023, the United States imported approximately 7.88 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day, BCFD, from Canada, demonstrating Canada's key role as the leading foreign supplier of natural gas to the American economy. Uninterrupted supplies of Canadian natural gas are of paramount importance to the United States, providing heat to homes, supporting industrial enterprises, and generating electricity, especially during periods of peak winter demand, when energy needs reach their zenith. Canada's extensive network of gas pipelines, stretching over 117,000 kilometers, plays a crucial role in transporting this valuable resource both domestically and to export markets. Major pipelines, such as TC Energy's NGTL system and the TransCanada Mainline, serve as vital arteries, pumping natural gas from production areas to consumption centers in both countries. These pipelines ensure a reliable and efficient flow of fuel, strengthening the energy interdependence between Canada and the United States. Despite increased natural gas production within the U.S., imports from Canada remain critical for maintaining affordable and stable energy supplies, especially during periods of high demand when domestic resources may be insufficient. The integrated pipeline system and long-standing energy partnerships between the two countries continue to support energy security and economic stability throughout North America, ensuring a reliable energy supply for millions of consumers. The ambitious Keystone XL project was mired in intense controversy for a decade, involving environmental, political, and economic aspects. Initiated in 2008 by TC Energy, formerly TransCanada, the project aimed to transport crude oil from the Canadian province of Alberta to refineries in the United States. Proponents emphasized the prospects for economic growth and strengthening the country's energy security. Critics, however, expressed serious concerns about potential environmental damage and regulatory risks, laying the foundation for one of the most heated infrastructure battles in modern history. To understand the origins of this controversy, it's necessary to look at the history of the Keystone pipeline system, which began operations in 2010. This original system transports crude oil from Alberta's Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin to various destinations in the U.S., including refineries in Illinois and Texas, as well as storage facilities in Oklahoma. Building on this foundation, TC Energy proposed the Keystone XL expansion, a large-scale pipeline project spanning 1,900 kilometers, designed to create a more direct and efficient route. The new line was expected to increase capacity by 830,000 barrels per day, connecting Hardisty, Alberta, with Steel City, Nebraska. Initially conceived as a way to optimize crude oil supplies to refineries along the Gulf Coast, the Keystone XL project faced unexpected obstacles. While the economic viability of the project seemed evident, the environmental and social consequences raised serious public concerns. Critics of the project pointed out that extracting oil from Alberta's oil sands results in significantly higher greenhouse gas emissions compared to traditional crude oil extraction. This fact, in itself, was alarming given the growing focus on climate change issues. Particular concern was raised by the planned pipeline route, which passed through the ecologically sensitive Sandhills region of Nebraska and the Ogallala Aquifer, which provides fresh water to millions of people. Opponents of the project warned of potential oil spills that could cause irreparable damage to water resources and agricultural lands, leading to catastrophic consequences for local ecosystems and farms. Equally important were the protests of indigenous peoples, who expressed concerns that the pipeline construction could affect their sacred sites, violate treaty obligations, and damage their ancestral lands. The resolute opposition of Native American tribes, such as the Rosebud Sioux and Fort Belknap, became a significant obstacle to the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Their lawsuits not only delayed work, but also drew public attention to this controversial project. As public discontent and legal battles intensified, the political landscape surrounding the pipeline underwent a radical shift, reflecting the change of power in the United States. In 2015, President Barack Obama, guided by climate protection considerations, vetoed the construction of Keystone XL, emphasizing that the project contradicted national efforts to combat global warming. However, with the arrival of Donald Trump in power in 2017, the situation reversed completely. The new president, seeing the pipeline as a means of creating jobs and strengthening the country's energy independence, overturned his predecessor's decision and gave the project the green light. However, the fate of Keystone XL was once again in question in 2021. Upon assuming office, President Joe Biden revoked the construction permit on his first day, reaffirming the priority of combating climate change in his political agenda. Thus, the long-suffering project became a hostage of political winds and a symbol of the polarization of American society on issues of energy and the environment. This move reflected a global trend toward environmental responsibility and foreshadowed the decline of the Keystone XL project. Faced with tightening regulatory requirements and the loss of political support, TC Energy officially announced its abandonment of the project in June 2021, halting all construction work. Despite this decision, the Keystone XL story was not definitively over. In early 2025, during his second presidential term, Donald Trump attempted to revive the project, reversing President Biden's decision to revoke the construction permits for the pipeline. However, TC Energy did not express interest in resuming the project, and a significant portion of the planned pipeline route remained incomplete. Environmental organizations and indigenous communities continue to voice their opposition, highlighting the ongoing threats the project poses to the environment and indigenous rights. Thus, the Keystone XL pipeline remains a vivid symbol of the ongoing confrontation between economic progress, environmental protection, and the sovereignty of indigenous peoples in North America. Donald Trump's return to the idea of restoring the Keystone XL pipeline has once again sparked heated discussions about energy security in North America. These efforts reflect a broader concern about the stability of the economy and the unpredictability of the global oil market. Proponents of the project argue that its resumption would not only create new jobs, but also significantly strengthen the region's energy independence. However, despite the economic arguments, the revival of Keystone XL will face serious obstacles. Environmentalists warn of the significant environmental risks associated with the project. In addition, the project will face new regulatory barriers and likely lawsuits from environmental organizations and indigenous groups. It should not be forgotten that a new project developer will need to be found, as TC Energy has already withdrawn from it. In the future, energy cooperation between the United States and Canada must strike a balance between economic interests and environmental requirements. This can be achieved either through the revival of infrastructure projects or through the creation of new partnerships in the field of green energy. Canada, in turn, is actively investing in new oil and gas pipeline infrastructure, seeking to reduce its dependence on the U.S. market and expand its energy exports to various parts of the world. Canada is resolutely strengthening its energy sovereignty and economic stability, seeking to protect the energy sector from the turbulence of the global market. A key element of this strategy was the completion of the Trans Mountain (TMX) pipeline expansion, a large-scale government project. The upgrade nearly tripled the capacity, increasing it from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels per day. This opens new horizons for Canadian oil, allowing it to reach not only the west coast of the United States, but also promising Asian markets. The increased export capacity is expected to narrow the price gap between Canadian Western Canadian Select and American West Texas Intermediate crude. This, in turn, could bring significant revenues to Canadian producers and strengthen the country's position on the global energy stage. However, despite the triumphant completion of TMX, Canada does not intend to stop there. The country continues to actively consider new projects aimed at further diversifying export routes and strengthening its position in the energy world. However, the horizon of Canadian energy policy is by no means cloudless. On the way to the implementation of new pipeline projects, formidable obstacles loom: strict regulatory requirements, acute environmental concerns, and unrelenting political resistance. These difficulties are exacerbated by growing public pressure demanding decisive action to combat climate change, creating an extremely difficult environment for obtaining permits for large-scale infrastructure projects. The consequences of the transformation of Canadian energy strategy are felt far beyond the country, directly affecting the United States. The American economy is heavily dependent on Canadian oil, importing about 60% of its required crude oil from its northern neighbor. Canadian heavy crude oil is particularly sought after by U.S. refineries, especially those in the Midwest and Gulf Coast regions, which were originally designed to process heavier grades of oil. Any disruption or reduction in Canadian oil supplies could lead to serious operational problems for these facilities, inevitably leading to higher fuel prices for American consumers and potential supply disruptions. In recent years, the specter of American tariffs on Canadian oil has prompted Canada to vigorously seek new markets. This strategic maneuver could seriously affect the access of American refineries to relatively inexpensive heavy crude oil. American companies face a dilemma: either bear the burden of increased costs or invest significant funds in modernizing production to work with other grades of oil. In any case, this is a complex and costly process. Thus, The long-standing energy interdependence between Canada and the United States is on the verge of fundamental change. Canada's efforts to diversify export routes are likely to transform the entire North American energy trade. While the United States will undoubtedly remain an important market for Canadian oil, the development of new export corridors to Asia and other regions could significantly weaken the close energy ties between the two countries. Such a shift could prompt. In the pursuit of energy independence, the United States is considering diversifying its sources of crude oil, looking to players such as Mexico and Venezuela, as well as emerging African producers. This move could push American refineries to innovate and adapt to a more diverse supply structure. At the same time, Canada is focusing on expanding and modernizing its pipeline infrastructure, a strategic move aimed at strengthening its economic position in the dynamic global energy market. These changes will undoubtedly present new challenges to the U.S. refining sector. However, they also open opportunities for both countries to revise and strengthen their energy strategies, increasing the resilience and flexibility of their systems in response to the changing global landscape. Welcome to everyone who is with us today. If our materials have touched you, aroused interest, or inspired new achievements, we would appreciate your support. Like the videos you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel to stay updated and be part of our community. Your participation is incredibly important to us because it helps us grow and develop. And don't miss another interesting video that is already waiting for you on our